They lit the Pentagon on fire. That's lighting the pentagram on fire.
What's up, everybody? This is your man Prince Solomon back in the building. Welcome to Thought Crimes. Let's get into it. Prodigy, one half of the dynamic duo known as Mobb Deep, was right about everything that you currently see right now in hip-hop. The crazy part about it is at the time when Prodigy was running around with the legendary producer himself, Havoc, they were really just making their stomping grounds, declaring their territory, making sure people don't play Queensbridge. They don't play Queens just in general, standing up for New York during the highlight of the West Coast, East Coast War. But of course, as they matured, not only in age, but sonically, Prodigy began to mature with his philosophy. He took a step back and looked at the grander picture. One of the things that Prodigy was one of the first and earlier rappers to speak about overtly, that there was a version of COINTELPRO that went on in hip hop.
I had got pulled over one night by what's called the Hip Hop Task Force. Now this task force was put together to monitor the people in the hip hop community, the rappers, the artists.
My name is Derek Parker. I'm the retired detective for the NYPD. I started the rap in the hip hop squad.
On my back, the hip hop police know me real good. They be like, there you go, search him.
It was called the Hip Hop Task Force, or what later becomes to be known as the Hip Hop Police. Of course, it was even brought up by the likes of Busta Rhymes. What's interesting about Busta Rhymes, he's more silent about things now.
Going to the Grammy party, some minivan with about 4 to 6 cops was in it. What's up, Busta Rhymes? I just wanted you to know that we're gonna be, if you see a little car in your rearview mirror, whenever you're moving around for the next couple of weeks, we just want you to know that it's us and we're gonna be following you.
Early on, especially towards the tail end of the 90s, Busta Rhymes was knee deep in a lot of conspiracy conversations. I could even argue that a bulk, if not more than half of Busta Rhymes' discography really fringes on the idea of an impending doom, an apocalyptic order, Y2K, when disaster strikes, all the way up to anarchy. He even touches on it lightly on The Big Bang Theory. And around this time, Prodigy also was speaking his mind about what was going on, just more on a global scale, where Busta would kind of move into a bit of religious, spiritual mindset, and the 4 horsemen coming back.
That a major disaster will be striking all levels of existence.
Prodigy, on the other hand, not only did invoke spirituality and concerns of mortality, and possibly early on with his own mortality because of the sickle cell that he suffered from, he always understood that he wasn't going to be living that long. But one of the things that Prodigy did do on a grander scale was speak about global governance. This came out at a time when people were running around such as Immortal Technique, you had Akala, you even had the emergence of Paris, and then you had the final run of Public Enemy. Of course, they are curators and legendary innovators and pioneers of political, social hip-hop. But Prodigy, during the second phase of his career, especially when he begins to branch more so out as a solo artist, began to delve further into what was taking place with, as he put it, the wool being pulled over everybody's head.
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, trying to keep their eye on me.
Now, around this time, during the release of H.N.I.C. 2, Prodigy began to go around and speak about some of the details that went on in the music industry.
I believe that there's definitely secret society. You know what I mean? I believe definitely maybe some of these label heads, like major labels and like major corporate companies, might have something to do with it, and might be involved with the agenda.
Of course, he talked about the architects and the controllers and how oil and gas and the prison industrial complex were all behind the scenes as the grand wizards, pun intended, of the stage that became known as mainstream hip-hop. Now, as hip-hop began to flourish and possibly at its commercial height in the 2000s with the Nellies and EMINEM'S and 50 Cent and the last public phase of Dr. Dre, Aftermath, and of course the Southern hip hop run that really was running rampant at that time. It was important for Prodigy to really speak about what was going on behind the veil. Now, of course, as we've seen historically within hip hop specifically, it's happened in other genres of music, and it's happened at different times throughout humanity. When people are frolicking amongst each other, naked and having fun around bonfires, campfires, whether it's Woodstock or whether it's burning tree, burning bush, burning George Bush, whatever the case may be. If somebody comes along and they say, hey guys, it's time to take things a little bit more serious, of course, a lot of people are going to opt in favor of the Pied Pipers. All sorts of regions were getting the party started. Not only that, you had to couple in with R&B. It was a feel-good time. I mean, Usher was spinning around on his head. Everybody was having fun. Chris Brown wouldn't stop doing backflips. But Prodigy still maintained the course from the mid-90s all the way into the 2000s. Did he frolic a little bit with G-Unit and experimented with some of the sonics that came with signing with Aftermath and the behemoth known as Shady, G-Unit, Aftermath, that whole conglomerate? Yes, he did. And did they have some hits? Yes, they did. But one thing about Prodigy, he always defaulted back to speaking towards governing powers or the brainwashing as he saw it within hip-hop. And he's not all that wrong. Many of the things that Prodigy talked about then, from H.N.I.C. 2 to Hegelian dialectic, as much as people bemoaned it and kind of rolled their eyes and said, I want to hear Jay-Z on My President is Black remix, everything that he talked about is running rampant at such an immense rate today. He was right about everything that you see going on in hip-hop. Now, at the time when there was more money circulating, you had some rappers that had a chance to hide behind the veneer of integrity or artistic purity, or even the idea that we're just making money, what's the problem? And of course, when the economy is looking better and there's a black president running around, a black first woman, and black children in the White House, of course people are going to kind of disregard Prodigy as a kook, especially early on when he was going around to different independent podcasts and even landed on InfoWars. Of course, this is before Alex Jones made his big orange turn. But at that point in time, you did have a split that was taking place in hip hop. Not so much now. Some of the things that people argue about are kind of culturally tropish. I mean, can a Mexican say the N-word, or is the streets dead? When you really go back 15 to even in some cases 20 years earlier, the conversations were more dense.
Of American society is predicated upon deceit, thievery, mendacity, and ripping folk off. Hip-hop at its best certainly will articulate something against that, but at its worst, it reflects the very pathology of American society.
It's one of the reasons why you did have MCs such as Akala and the legendary track Banquet of Thieves, as Sin has exemplified all the time when she's speaking about what's been going on in politics and hip-hop. Or if you go further into the legendary album Let's Get Free by the dynamic duo themselves, M1 and Stickman, of course Dead Prez. Then of course you had Immortal Technique with not only his incredible underground run, but his studio release. If you go back and you listen to the conversations that were a lot denser and some of the things that were being spoken about, you would see a lot of those artists where they drew the line was more recognizable.
Burn a bush, cause for peace he no push no button. Killing over oil and grease, no weapons of destruction. How can we follow leader when it's a corrupt one?
A lot more consistent. I mean, even if you think about it, right? Dead Prez, H.N.I.C. 2, Prodigy. You go through even Building 7, Lupe Fiasco, of course.
What you just said is fallacious. That means it's wrong.
It's not fallacious at all,
yes,
sir. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. The point and the purpose of why are we in Afghanistan if it wasn't to hunt down Al Qaeda and the terrorist network, sir? Because it definitely wasn't for any other reason.
You go through the list of what was being talked about and who were exactly the soldiers of counterculture. You could see that the energy and the messaging was a lot more consistent and stronger, and to some degree, I would even say powerful than what we get today. Now, it's fun to be online in the amusement park of hip-hop, or better yet, I would say rap. But in the grander scheme of things, the messaging doesn't mean anything today. It's just, let's be honest. I mean, you got a few people moving around, but if you go back to exactly the album of H.N.I.C 2 and then some of the conversations that Prodigy had always been having, everything he stated came to be. You know, at one point in time, of course, he took his aim at Jay-Z. They had a long-standing, I guess you could call it a beef or just more so tension. And then, of course, there was backyardian shenanigans of Nas and Prodigy because Nas definitely lit the fuse on Stillmatic.
Hey, yo, P, Prodigy, I got love for you, man. I love you, man. You know what I'm saying? Just get them unloyal niggas from out your circle.
And you have to take it back to when Prodigy and Havoc stood up for New York when Tupac was on his Attila the Hun tour. Now, even though they were celebrated as possibly at that point in time one of the few New York artists to quote-unquote clap back at the West, what was fascinating about Prodigy more so was about his evolution in the consciousness of his mind. He eventually grew to understand that the West Coast and East Coast beef was manufactured. In fact, Prodigy is on record himself stating he wasn't really a fan of Tupac, you know, with Brenda's Got a Baby or Keep Your Head Up. He actually became a fan of Tupac, of course, after Tupac passed away and he heard the Machiavelli 7-Day Theory album. Then, of course, later on, once seen as an enemy, Prodigy began to view Tupac in a more understanding light, given the mechanisms and the puppeteers that run around within hip-hop. He even lamented that in H.N.I.C 2 and also Hegelian Dialectic about how a lot of rappers are puppets. He eventually even began to kind of scale back his 0-point bulletin, all eyes on Jay-Z messaging, and he began to walk that back and state that at the end of the day, whether he likes any of these guys or not, he understands for the fact that they all are puppets on all different levels, even the concept of culture and how the terminology in itself is used to enslave much of the youth. Keep this in mind, hip-hop was originally started by the youth, and then when the corporations step in, it becomes an enslavement camp. It becomes propaganda.
Don't wanna spend dollars, just cents every time. We want grilled chicken for only 89, cause it's tasty so cheap and it's packed to last. I know I'm talking fast, did you get all that? That's how it's done right there.
These are some of the things that Prodigy routinely talked about all the way up to his death. So I find it fascinating that Prodigy was able to grow from what was the early beginnings of the infamous with his rhyming partner, Havoc, and he would move through the traditional trappings of a young black man and getting into it with other black men, or even as he stated in his record, only seeing other black men as his enemy, especially in the mid-90s. And there was so much money put into the manufactured beef of 1996. Well, I could argue 95, 96, and then 97. And it did give the economy of the music industry, particularly beef hip-hop from that era, it gave it a stimulus package, a financial and cultural stimulus package that still to this day the music industry had not seen. And Prodigy had also talked about his role in those situations as well, and understanding that the higher ups had arranged a lot of this stuff as well. So a lot of his messaging was very dense and very deep. A lot of his messaging made a lot of the people around that time, even all the way up to his death, very uncomfortable, as you can see with his final interview. And because with the passing of Prodigy, am I saying he was the only one that was talking about these themes? As I mentioned earlier, some of his contemporaries or his peers with that particular set of rappers and MCs, they spoke about these things as well.
Government that worship an owl, they practice witchcraft to harness their power.
Artists like Prodigy and Immortal Technique and even Lauryn Hill and Ja Rule the Damager and Wise Intelligent, they were the problem to the state and the corporate state as well. And then the solution, of course, is to give you these conversations surrounding Young Thug, Tekashi, Gunna, the streets, drill rap, drill music, and who should be sliding on who, ladies and gentlemen. So at the end of the day, the late great Prodigy himself was right about everything, and even in his absence, his message reigns true, even more so today. Drop your comment below. Tell me, what do you think about the messaging of Prodigy, and what are some of your favorite joints off of H.N.I.C 2 or Hegelian Dialectic, or better yet, the Greater Mobb Deep discography? I'm your man, Prince Solomon. For Thought Crimes, I am out. Peace.
Thought Crimes.
And I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow.
Oh my God, what's this?
And I sing happy. And I sing happy. And I sing happy. And I sing
to this day. To this day.
Perhaps you shouldn't turn your back on me.
Is that a challenge?
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
White folks are nosy. They have specials. Nosy specials. Why does a bee make honey? You ain't a bee. Why do you give a fuck?